everyone, welcome to another episode of Convos with Sazón with yours truly, Gata Mejia. With me today is a very special guest at the intersection of two unconventional career paths. Her name is Naz Karabulut. She is a storm chaser and also a New York City photographer and content creator. So, hello, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me, firstly.
Of course.
I was so excited about when you brought it up to me. I was like, oh my God. Like, I've had an interview before, but it was just very brief over the news. And to be actually part of a podcast was like, okay, this is really unique. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you for agreeing to it. And I want to be clear that this is a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
We are, as we say in Spanish, en la sala de la casa, the comfort of your own living room.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that you're able to let loose and feel like you can be fully yourself. So before we get into what you do, I want to actually get down to who you are and what makes everything that you identify with outside of storm chasing and photography that I'm sure has influenced your decision to pursue them both.
Okay, that's a really good question. I guess growing up, coming from an immigrant family, we're so conditioned to just think within a box or within a specific, we're conditioned to think out, like, with limited, not necessarily limited beliefs, because technically our parents did immigrate to this country. They did think that, we had a potential for a better future, but it was more of like keeping that culture and like everything intact and not stepping outside of it while you're still kind of pushing your boundaries. So I guess before all of that, I am an immigrant's daughter at the end of the day. So I think that's what also propels me, because a lot of people, now that you brought that up, actually, I just realized a lot of people, when they look at my photography, they look at my page, they look at the things that I'm doing, and especially people from back home, they're like, wow, you're so lucky. You, like, were you born there, this and that? I'm like, no, like, I wasn't born here. But more importantly, like, it's maybe in a way, yes, I am lucky because my family did sacrifice a lot to bring me here. I sacrificed a lot to be here because I didn't even get to meet my parents till I was 6. They left me there when I was like 7 months old because and another thing is that they did everything, like they took the proper channels, they did everything they had to do. So we kind of, we waited, we were separated from one another. I grew up with my grandparents. So like, it's like that immigrant background that kind of pushes you to my way of, at least, like, if I can succeed, if I can get better at what I do and who I am as an individual, that's my thank you to my dad, most importantly, to my great-grandparents and my grandparents who did, they fled their villages, they relocated, a lot happened. My dad came to this country with, I know he had nothing in his pocket. I know he was dependent on his brothers, who my uncle is an accountant and, is a CPA in this country and in the state of New Jersey. And, a lot of things, he was working, while he was studying, my parents were working, they were bringing in some money, and they were all living together. I remember we were living up, when I first came to the country, I remember we were up in an attic living at one of my uncle's houses. So there's that, background of that kind of pushes you to drive you to be who you are before any of those identities fall in place. So before anything, I know I'm kind of dragging it, but it's I guess the core of it is that I am an immigrant in this country, and everything I stand on now is the building blocks of all the sacrifices, everything that my family did to kind of bring me here.
Absolutely. I want to make sure that we actually mention where your family is from, because I know that you're very proud of it. So You're from Turkey, right?
Yes. So yes, I am Turkish. I was born there. I was born in Istanbul. Going a little further back, I'm also Azerbaijani. My ethnicity is Azerbaijani. My great-grandparents, they immigrated to Kars, Turkey. And from there, my parents were born there. And then from there, they immigrated to Istanbul. And then that's where my parents met. And then that's how I was born. Yeah. So there is that multi, I wouldn't say multi background, but there is a little bit of influence of the Middle Eastern background. There is there's a Persian background. There is a little bit of influence of Russian too, because of back in the Soviet Union, there was a lot of even some of the words that we speak in Azerbaijani, a lot of the words, there's a few words that are not a few, but a select amount that are when you think about it, you're like, it's not Turkish, it's not Persian, there's nothing connecting to it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, it's Russian. Like, so there is some influence in there that still lingers. But, mostly, Azerbaijani, Turkish, they're both a Turkic nation. So at the core of it, I am Turkish.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I've been to Turkey very fortunately, and I love that country. So I love that within the first couple of minutes of meeting you, that was one of the first things that you mentioned. You're like, yeah, my family's from Turkey. And I'm like, you should be proud. That's beautiful. Another aspect of your identity that you were very proud to mention to me as well is the fact that you're a mom. And that ties back the sacrifices that you mentioned your parents made at the time, also extends to the sacrifices that you're making currently as you pursue your dreams while simultaneously making sure that you're present for your kids. So talk about that for a little bit.
So that's probably one of the biggest positive stressors. Like in our field, we know that criticism could be good and bad, but we know that criticism in each form is positive for us because we need both. So this aspect of my life is both negatively stressful and also positively stressful because there's times where it's like, you're a mom, stop what you're doing, focus on your kids, your kids come first. But it's like, I didn't come this far to come this far. And I feel like it keeps who I am alive. It keeps that light inside my eyes, inside my soul awake so that I can be better. And when I'm better, I'm also a better mom to my kids. And then they also see me happier. Let me put it this way. It is so difficult to be the child of a storm chaser because they never know when a storm's going to hit. I mean, I'll give them a heads up, but it's like within minutes we could be like, pack up, we're leaving, we're chasing the storm. And as a parent, like I make sure, and I always tell this to everyone too, like my parents who get worried sometimes, I tell them, I'm like, listen, they're safest with me. And in fact, them being with me during these moments actually keeps me safer too, because then I'm like, okay, they're with me. I can't get too close. I have to keep my boundaries. I have to stay more careful. But there's that aspect of leave your dreams. Don't do anything because you're a mom. You have to stay home. You have to cook for them. You have to make sure everything's ready. But I'm like, I know it might sound a little selfish, but like my kids are 11 and 12 now, and they're like for the past maybe 4 years, 5 years that I've been actively pursuing this. Prior to that, I gave all of me to them, and that's why they're such amazing kids because I raised them with my love, my affection, my time, all of me. But I also came so far that I'm like, I can't let go of who I've become either because if I let go of who I am, I'm going to lose every essence of me and every essence that my kids also look up to.
I also want to give you credit because it's not easy to balance everything that you balance.
Yeah.
And by putting that aspect of yourself first, you are also showing them firsthand that number one, you can do what you put your mind to. And you're the first example, and as I was growing up, I was raised in a household where they were super supportive of what I did. And they didn't pigeonhole me, right, into only doing X, Y, Z. They were like, listen, whatever makes you happiest, go for it. You have our full support. Just make sure you're the best at whatever it is.
Right.
And you're quite literally showing that through your life experience. So I think that's beautiful. It doesn't make it any easier. But 100%. Do give yourself credit because, you mentioned selfishness. I don't think it's selfish. I think you're doing something for you, but you're also in turn doing something for them as well.
Correct. That's how I see it too because, everyone talks about this idea of balance. I don't believe that there is balance. There is not. It's an illusion. The idea of balance is a complete false narrative. Like one of my favorite quotes from the Addams Family is that what's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. So even that goes for what's right and what's wrong too, because someone else's right might be my wrong might be their right.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of like focus on balancing this life and work and this. There is no like something is always going to be giving more than the other. It's just a matter of being able to go back and forth to kind of prevent it from tipping over. But there is no like, I guess when they say that the balance of it is just to prevent it from tipping over, it doesn't necessarily mean equally keeping everything balanced.
Right. And it'll change from one moment to another.
Exactly.
Going back to your early beginnings, right? Okay. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how did that align with the examples you were raised with, number one, and then also what your parents told you, whether it was an expectation, whether it was support, and how does that translate to what you decided to pursue?
Okay, that's a good question. So first and foremost, as immigrants who did come here to this country, whether there is like those cultural expectations, there is. However, despite those cultural expectations, my father especially has always encouraged me to, work, not be dependent on some guy or some other people. It's just my family's always been the type to just work, hustle, get what you got to get done, and just, get successful. So that was always there. But in terms of society, how they viewed us, that was what kind of conflicted with what I was doing. So that's where my family was more of like, okay, kind of back down, because it was more about like, what are the people going to say? What is our neighbors going to say? What is our community going to say? But back to how everything started was I came to this country when I was maybe 5.5, 6 years old. I didn't speak any English. I had no idea what any of my classmates were saying. I don't think I spoke any proper English till at least second grade, maybe first grade. But at home, but we didn't have iPads growing up. We had like those old Macintosh computers. So, we spent a lot of time outdoors. So I would spend a lot of time just staring into the sky when we were outside. And then, I don't know, I was just so fascinated with the way the clouds were moving. With the rain in the summer, it was just so, I was like, how is it that it's so warm outside and so sunny, but at the same time it's also raining? There was a lot of questions that were kind of coming up, and I was just curious about it. So I started building up this binder where I would just like randomly go on like websites and just look up cloud formations and how they form. And I used to have a binder full of just random definitions of like weather terminology, meteorology terminology. And my parents thought I was crazy because they're like, to them, it's like, what's up with you in the sky? Like, it's such an odd hobby or job in a sense, because it's not your typical standard office job. It's not like accounting. It's not like business. It's not like, and when you think of weather, a lot of people make fun of it because it's constantly changing. So it's like, can we really rely on people? But that comes down to the public on who they choose to rely on too. If you're gonna not look into who you're following and kind of just blindly follow the news, then that's more on the public than the person who's relaying the information. But so I remember we lived in Toms River, New Jersey, and this one night I specifically remember I still to this day, even as a storm chaser, have never experienced such a raw storm as I did back then. Because, I just remember it being so late at night, and I remember the flashes of lightning were so bright that I thought it was daylight. And I remember my mom having no idea what was happening, what was going on. I didn't know. As a kid, I didn't know what was happening. I just remember the door she would try to go outside, and I remember the door just swinging open, and then the wind it was such an intense storm. Everything, like a lot of it is blurry, but I just remember how significant it had to be. So significant that it brought me to where I am today. Years later, maybe 5-6 years ago, I kind of was like, I really want to know what that storm was. Like, now that I know the resources of how to work the National Weather System database, I know how to like kind of go back into, the archives and everything. I was like, I want to know what this storm was. So I kind of went back. I put in the latitude, the longitude of everything. I kind of just factored everything in, and then I actually had a friend help me kind of figure it out. And we found out that it was August 20th, I believe, 1999. There was a water spout that had formed off the coast of Toms River, and it had turned into a land spout, turned into a EF2, EF3 tornado, and it caused a significant amount of damage. And the coordinates of my location to my house was an exact match. I was like, what? Like, even just thinking about it right now, I get the goosebumps. I'm like, I experienced my first possibly tornado, because I didn't even know what I was looking at the time. I was like, I experienced and most of us crazies, storm chasers, most of us have witnessed something significant enough to pursue what we do. Because it was like, why did my mom not know? Why? What if we all, like, we could have easily just, that could have been our last day. Because my mom didn't, like, she was just watching Turkish soap operas. You know how it is in our culture. It's like they just love to watch Turkish soap operas, and they're not very into watching whether unless something is happening right then and there, which at that time it's too late.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I fell in love with it. I was like, this is insane. Like, to just feel that raw power and just, I can't explain it. It's the most insane feeling because it's the only time where, like, as humans, I feel like we have so much caged up emotions that we can't necessarily let out or express. But I feel like storms do. And I feel like that's how we, like, when I look at a storm, like, that's me right there. Like, that's me, like, expressing, that's my way of kind of letting my anger out.
What a beautiful way to think about it. And you just mentioned, you know, you described yourself as part of the crazies, right? Yeah. I would argue it's bold because many people would see something like that, probably myself included, and I would run the other way, you know, but you're choosing to face this head on and look further into it. So with that being said, you can pinpoint the moment in which your curiosity was at a peak, right? And you remember it, obviously, still to this day, and it still physically impacts you, the goosebumps and everything. Yeah. How did that turn into becoming a storm chaser?
Okay, so after I got into the whole, you know, I want to be a meteorologist, but my family, like I said, as much as they encourage everything, meteorology to them was just like not a serious thing. They were like, what? Do something real with your life. And I'm like, this is real, you know? But at the time, they didn't understand it. So I went down my own, like, rabbit hole of pursuing other things. My uncle's an accountant, so I tried accounting. I tried biology. But, like, nothing can, I can't explain it. Like, nothing could just, I couldn't sit in class. I just couldn't. Like, I couldn't do it. But, like, put me in a thermodynamics class. No matter how difficult the statistics and the everything, the science of it is, the chemistry, I want to learn how these monsters form and how these beautiful but, like, graceful, like, I mean, I don't want to call them monsters either because it is a monstrous storm, the ones that we're specifically after. But to us, it's so beautiful in its own way because we see what other people don't see, I think. You know, yes, there is the destruction of it. And honestly, we get called out for that a lot, too. We get a lot of backlash because, you know, we're like, oh, this storm is so beautiful. And then, you know, we'll get comments like, not when it's lifting your house. And I'm like, we know that. And that's why, like, we try to balance it by trying to, like, get, you know, information out to people. Like, that's how I use my social media platforms. For example, right now, like, for example, there's a flash flood warning in effect. Parts of the Northeast are going to get, like, you know, some flooding. So I'm like, okay, let's post that into my stories. I use my photography to kind of get people to, I lure them in with the pretty and then hit them with the truth, you know, because that's, no one else cares about the weather unless they actually are aware. I had my kids. I got into a marriage. It didn't work out. I had my kids and, I realized, like, okay, these kids are getting older. I basically put my entire everything on hold because I mentally could not handle going to school, maintaining, like, my attention span was just not, like, especially having two kids back to back. My kids are 1 year and 2 weeks apart. So when my second was born, my daughter was 1 year old. So it's the postpartum part of it that people don't really talk about. It's really significantly there. And if you don't have a partner who actually helps you and is actually involved in that part of your life, it can take a toll on you. So once they got old enough, I was like, I can't give up on me. So I was like, I need to get back to it. So then back in 2020, I believe, 2020, I actually created, like, a website, Instagram page, and I started, like, just before I even started chasing, I started to, and mind you, like, before this, I was chasing, but, like, not to the level I am right now.
And what is the difference?
The difference is this. So when you're actively chasing a storm through like radar, satellite imagery, you're following the weather updates and everything, but you're doing it from where you're seated in the safety of your home, versus actually forecasting, targeting these locations, figuring out where the most significant storms are going to fire up, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's tornadoes, and then driving to that said place. Whether it's Texas, whether it's Oklahoma, whether it's Colorado, whether it's Florida. Like now I'm traveling across the country. So that's the difference. And like obviously being a mom kind of limits you in that sense because, you know, you need to have the resources, whether it's family or money, to be able to kind of make up for that. And storm chasing doesn't make you money unless you basically, we take footage for the news, so that basically gets sold and you make some money off of that, but it's nowhere near what I would use it as, like, to describe it, is it's pocket change because it's not a lot. If anything, the most it will do is cover the expenses of, you know, whether it's traveling or gas. I created the Instagram page and I was actually acting like a boy. I was actually acting like a man because to me it was like, they're going to be like, okay, she's not only a mom, but she's a girl. Like, it's a very male-dominated field, you know. So, like, I actually have a friend, Jen. She started this new, it's actually been around for a minute now, but she created this group called Girls Who Chase. So that empowers women like me, girls, anyone in STEM, science, to just kind of push forward and, you know, be loud and vocal about who we are and be unapologetic about it. So, but in the beginning of the stages of it, I basically just kind of hid my identity for a good 3-4 years. Wow. And I just put out these warnings. Like, I would even chase these storms and I would never show myself, or I would try to be really careful to not give off the slightest idea that I'm a female, because I was so, like, I don't want to say embarrassed, but I was definitely, like, you know, hesitant because I was afraid of what people were going to say. And then I don't know what happened, but something in me just snapped. And I was like, no, it's time. Like, this is who I am. I was like, there's no more hiding. There's no more going behind curtains. There's no more, you know, hiding in the dark. This is who I am, and it's time to embrace it. So then I started posting more frequently on Instagram, Facebook. And like at first no one was paying attention to it. Maybe they were. But for me, the goal was like, I'm not doing this for attention or for likes. I'm genuinely, as much as I love what I do as a storm chaser, I don't want to see anyone getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to have any family in the situation that I was in when I was younger, where our house could have been completely destroyed. Mm-hmm. And my mom didn't speak a word of English, and she, you know, only thing she watched was the Turkish soap opera. So it's like, okay, as a Turkish native speaker, I'm the only one in this area that does anything even remotely close to anything weather related, you know? So I was like, okay, some things need to change. So that's how it started. It started chasing some storms here, which we call baby storms, because when you compare the storms here in the Northeast to what's out west, it really is such a significant difference because the dynamics of everything works so differently there than here. Although that's actually starting to change. We're seeing many more tornadic activities here in New Jersey alone and New York City. So it's definitely there. So a lot of people, I feel like, need to be more tuned in with weather, but like reliable weather, not just like these clickbait things that try to, you know, push these fake things.
Would you say that the turning point, right, from monitoring it from your home and the comfort and the safety of your home as well versus physically going out to chase it, is to be that bridge between the people who need but may not be aware of the information versus what you were seeing out in the field?
So seeing the information and actually looking at like the information that's being fed, it's really easy to dismiss it and be like, oh, this is nothing. Versus when you're actually going out there and you're actually seeing the rotation of the clouds, you're seeing the wind, you're seeing the damage it's actually creating. One, you start to be like, oh, this is a lot more significant than it even looks. It's like looking at a GPS versus looking at the real thing. So, and again, that's why a lot of us, we like to put our visuals on the internet, because if we don't, people are just like, what are you talking about? Even like when we forecast like rain, I'll tell my friends like, it's gonna rain tomorrow, and they're like, no, my weather app says no, and then I'm like, it's gonna rain. So then it starts raining, but then like the next town over, there's no rain, and they're complaining we didn't get any rain. So it's just like, so that's where we're like, okay, we post like, okay, it did rain here, but it didn't rain there, or you know, flooding, significant flooding. Some areas will see much more higher precipitation than the others. So definitely going out there and experience, like trying to show people the footage gets you sucked into this like rush of adrenaline, I'm gonna say, that I can't to this day. Like, I mean, I have like, I mean, I don't know if I should get into this, but like I have done everything in my power to just make sure that I stay clear of anything that will drag me down a negative lane in terms of like drugs or anything like that. So like I can't compare it to that because I don't know what it's like. But if I were to, if I could like subconsciously think like in terms of mental health, like I know that there are people who turn to substance abuse. They turn to different ways of kind of coping with their depression or their emotions, and that's where storm chasing saved me. Like I'm totally just pivoting this right now, but as I speak, I just realized this. Like I remember I watched this one YouTube storm chaser, and he had talked about how storm chasing also saved him. And I think that was my turning point, actually, because I never related so much to him. He went down a different path where he was taking pain, like he was injured, he was playing for like, you know, sports, and then once his injury happened, he like the drugs that he was taking to relieve his pain was just pushing him down a wrong path. And then he just started storm chasing, you know. And then he's like, okay, this is where I find there's so much things you find, you appreciate every second. Like when you look at the clouds, for example, I try to take out my camera as fast as I can. I try to take a photo. Why? Because I know that cloud is never going to be there again. Even if it is, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to have the same color, the same shape. And that applies to my life now, because I'm like, okay, life is in itself a storm. So there's a lot of like, what's the word? Parallels, and also like when you compare something to something, metaphors in terms of storm chasing. So it's like, it teaches you how to think on the go. It teaches you how to be fast, but it also makes you appreciate life in a way you never have seen it before, because you see how fast in a matter of seconds people can lose their lives, how fast they could lose everything that they held on to. So it kind of pushes you into a path where you're like, you go from being so obsessed and like materialistic and holding on to things and not letting go to knowing that all of that can change within a second, and everything could. So it makes you detach in a sense, and it makes you focus and attach on the important things. Absolutely. And actually slow down and kind of observe what's happening around you.
Let's talk about the risks that come with storm chasing. My point of reference is the movie Twister, which may be the case for many who are listening or watching, but you've actually lived it. So talk about the risks, both the obvious ones versus the ones that people may not be as aware of. So when it comes to storm chasing, a lot of people think, especially the ones that are interested in it, they think that they could just get in a car and just follow the clouds and go. I totally recommend watching Supercell. Not everyone liked it, and I totally can understand why and why not. But one thing that really stood out to me in the beginning of the movie was that the little boy, I'm not going to try, I don't want to give away anything, but in the beginning, the father and the boy have a dialogue, and the boy asks his father, he says, "Dad, when can you take me storm chasing?" And the father tells him, "When you know what you're looking at." Storms and anything in the atmosphere has its own anatomy. So if you don't know what you're looking at ultimately, like, because there's so many times when we lose cell phone coverage, we lose internet, when you don't have the technology that you're using to chase these storms or to be in them, you're literally just left to your senses, and just
knowing the road networks, knowing what to look for in the clouds, in the atmosphere. And that's where that thin line of life and death comes. Because one wrong move, one wrong, like, let me go right, let me go left, can cost you your life. So I've had a few close calls where I had no cell phone service while I was chasing tornado warned storms, and they were actually in Pennsylvania, like right here, close to home. So the main risks is just relying on technology and not knowing when to stop. There's a lot of us where, and I know a few of my storm chaser friends can vouch for this, like, and they've been in very significant, I don't know how they made it out alive, I'll be very honest. Sometimes we get so caught up in it. It's happened to me where a storm is approaching and I'm just so mind blown by the size of it, the structure, the winds, and it's just that rush of adrenaline. Like I said, it's such a different feeling. So when that storm's approaching, I'm just like, one more second. But in that second, you don't realize that these storms are moving 60 to 70 to 80 miles per hour. So you need to move. And the dangers of storm chasing aren't necessarily just the storm itself. There's the debris, there's the hail, there's a lot of storm chasers. Actually, the main reason why fatalities occur is because of car accidents, because people are not watching where they're going, or they're speeding, or they're too busy trying to look at the radar, and they're trying to multitask. So the main risks, like a lot of people, like my family, they're always like, what if you get picked up? I'm like, listen, that should be the least of your concerns or worries, because as long as I'm safe and inside somewhere, the storm is not going to get me. But if I'm stupid and I'm reckless and I remember I was chasing, I went to Texas and I drove into New Orleans for Hurricane Ida's landfall. It made landfall as a near Category 5, 5 miles short, 5 mile per hour short of becoming a Category 5 hurricane at landfall. And I remember I went outside, and at first, I was like, oh, this is nothing. This is just, it was 150 mile per hour winds, about 145. And I was like, this isn't that bad. But then I just see this sheet metal getting flown off the roof of something. And and I just ducked. And I was like, that was the day when I realized, it's not the storm, it's what's in the storm. Mm-hmm. You know how they say that, for example, we're afraid of the dark? No, we're not afraid of the dark. We're afraid of what our mind thinks is in the dark.
Yes.
So the same thing applies to storms. It's not the storm, it's what's within the storm.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to storms, I'm going to bring up something very important, especially with the incident that happened back in Texas just recently. Mm-hmm. Floodwaters. A lot of people don't take that seriously. They think that water is just, I always say, water is very unforgiving. When you're driving through floodwaters, you don't know if that road collapsed under, so you don't know if there's a sinkhole under that water. And floodwaters can rise so fast. After I intercepted Hurricane Ida's landfall, I flew back to Jersey within a day. And then I basically intercepted the remnants of Ida as it moved northeast, and it collided with a stalled front. And what happened was, I don't know if you remember, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, mm-hmm. There was a lot of significant flooding in this area, and over 50 people lost their lives that day. So many places were flooded. I remember I was chasing with my truck, and I was stranded for the whole night. But because I knew what to look for and I knew how to read my radar, I knew exactly how much rain was falling where, and because I know the topography of the area, I knew, okay, I need to get to higher ground and then I'll be safe. But a lot of people don't know that, and then they drive into these floodwaters, and then before you know it, they're underwater, and then they're risking their lives.
That's so important to pinpoint, and I want to go back to what you mentioned of the time is money, first of all. Mm-hmm. It could literally cost you your life. Correct. In moments like that. And having something that snaps you out of being mesmerized and fascinated. Mm-hmm. Your kids are that? How do you get yourself out of those moments?
So when I'm alone, it's a little different. When you're alone, you don't have that. I don't know if I'm a spiritual believer. I mm-hmm. believe in a God. So for me, the way I see it, it's like my parents or my grandparents' prayers, or maybe my kids' attraction to me, like their bond with me, maybe. But like there should have been so many instances where that should have been my last, but there wasn't. Like, and realistically, when you're alone, there isn't someone to snap you out of it, you know. So I've had a few close calls where, whether it's the storm, we almost got struck by lightning just back in June, 50 feet apart from the bolts. I have a picture on my Instagram. You could see, like, we didn't even, the thing is, it happened. The thing with lightning is that it happens so fast, and light travels faster than the sound. So the flash was so fast and instantaneous. In the video, you see us, we're not even reacting when the bolt drops until we hear the boom, and then we all run for cover. So it's a lot of, like, it's those moments that, like, snap you out of it. But, like,
yeah, it's like a reality check.
Exactly.
Like, right in your face that you can't
in that
ignore.
moment, I'm like, I'll get a phone call, or, like, my dad will be like, what are you doing? This and that. Like, or my kid will call me, be like, Mommy, is everything okay? And it's like, that's where I feel like, okay, God's watching over. Because it's those moments where, like, if that phone call hadn't came in, then I probably would have still be here. Yeah. So, you know, whether having kids or not, this is where I reemphasize the selfish part, because this is how people see it, where, like, my one wrong move can cost my kids their mother. So there is that risk. And yes, at the end of the day, when you look at it from the outside, as much as I try to justify it not being selfish, it is in a way, because my kids do deserve to have their mother with them. You know, they do deserve to be, because they're too little right now. Even as grown-ups, we want our parents to be around us, you know?
Thinking to more experiences, right? In the time that you've been doing this, has there been a storm that has particularly stood out in terms of, oh my gosh, from 0 to 100, life-threatening, one of the most severe storms that you have witnessed? And what have you learned from that experience specifically?
So that will definitely be Ida.
Yeah.
Because of the flooding. Because every storm comes with its risks, like we spoke, like whether it's the wind, whether it's the debris, whether it's the lightning, you know, they all factor in. But one thing that you can outrun, you could take shelter in obviously, unless you're in the plains and you're like, you have absolutely nowhere to go. Other than that, you can most of the time take shelter somewhere. But you cannot outrun water. That's the main thing. So Ida was a very big, that was my first major hurricane that I chased. So learning exactly on the eastern side of the hurricane, the eastern quadrant will always be like the tornadics, the spin ups and everything. And on the western side, as the hurricane spins, what it'll do is it'll push all the water from the ocean or the Gulf on land. So on shore. And then when that happens, that's where you get all the storm surge and all that stuff. And those are the things that people underestimate. Maybe 4 minutes away from my location when I was chasing that night, I remember hearing screams, and then I found out that somebody drowned in their car. Just 4 minutes driving.
Based on your experience, for those who have not dedicated their lives to storm chasing, what are some tips that can help an average person when it comes to these types of natural disasters, right? In terms of things to keep in mind, what should we have on hand when something turns from, oh, it's not that bad, to, okay, we have to take cover, or we need to have food, water, without alarming people, obviously.
So the number one thing that I have been advocating for a while now, but have been actually emphasizing lately, especially with the flooding that happened in Texas, is to have a NOAA weather radio. Because those things, like, they don't need batteries. They have these like mechanisms where you just kind of like turn it, and then it'll like recharge the battery. It's solar powered. It's so like versatile to just have in case of an emergency. If there's a countrywide blackout and there's nothing working, that will work. That will get. So that's why we were kind of really frustrated with these floodings, and we're like, yes, flooding happens so fast, and sometimes it's really hard to, outrun it. But they can be the fatalities can be prevented when you take the correct measures. So keeping a weather radio, especially the NOAA one, in hand. I have one in each So I have a regular chase vehicle and I have a regular standard vehicle that I use for daily use. My truck is basically lifted because I go through high waters and everything. So, and the terrain, so the tires I made for that. So in each vehicle I have a radio, and then also at home I have a radio. So I make sure that like my parents have a radio, because that thing, if there's something significant, it will activate itself.
And what are the warning signs that people should look out for? Again, without getting super technical,
Yeah.
but as anyone who doesn't necessarily have the professional or the practical background in this, what are some things that we can keep in mind moving forward so that we know when to seek help, when to, get shelter?
So one of the biggest things we say for one lightning, when you hear thunder, a lot of us go out and we take photos of it. I'm aware, but we know the risks that come with it, so we're willingly putting our lives in the risk at that point. But for the average person who is not doing this, go inside. Do not be walking around with your umbrellas when it's thundering outside, because you don't know if that lightning bolt is going to strike that metal rod and you're holding it, and it's just not worth the risk. A lot of people just don't realize this. When there's a lot of rain happening, and you see even the smallest bit of puddle accumulating on the roadway, don't drive past it. Like don't drive through it. It might not be anything, but it could also be something like significant. The upstate New York, by the Hudson Valley area, actually, I think it was last year, there was so much rain and the entire roadway collapsed under, and there was vehicles trapped in it. And people, I'm not sure, I didn't follow up with it. I don't know if there were any fatalities, but I know that there were definitely vehicles that ended up driving in it and actually falling in. So like, I definitely, when it comes to those things, just keep a weather radio on hand. When there is a storm approaching, the worst case scenario, nothing happens and you're safe. And, because a lot of people make fun of us for that too. Oh, nothing happened. Well, good. I'm glad nothing happened. That's what we want. But in case something does happen, you need to at least be ready. So that's my thing. It's just be just aware of your surroundings. A lot of people walk with just staring at their feet. No, don't look at your feet. Just like either look straight or, observe the clouds. It's really, so you don't really need to know a lot of meteorological terminology or a lot of like education to know the most basic things. Like my last name, Karabulut, literally translates to dark cloud, which ultimately translates into a thunderstorm cloud, like a storm cloud. So like,
you're someone to be reckoned with.
So like when it comes to things like that, like you could see the difference between a storm cloud and a regular cloud. Like it's just clear or it's white and puffy, but then when you see rain, the clouds start getting moody and it starts getting gray and dark. So when you see that, you're like, okay, it's just awareness of everything around you, It's things like that.
Taking advantage that I have what I would consider an expert here, I want to demystify the following. For example, when I look at a weather app and I see a percentage, right?
Yes.
Many people see thunder or rain or whatever, and you're like, oh, 70% chance of rain. Mm-hmm. Those who check the weather app, I am guilty of being a serial ignorer, and I will walk out and I'm like, who knew that it was raining? Turns out everybody did who took the minute, to kind of look at the weather app. How should we interpret the information that is readily available?
So for starters, I want to start off with the percentage. When you look at the percentage, that doesn't mean that if you see like 70% of chance of rain, it doesn't mean 70% of chance of rain. It means 70% of the forecast area will see rain. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a 70% chance it will rain. A lot of people don't know this. So that's definitely one. And weather apps, they pull their information from other databases, like whether it's the National Weather Service or wherever they're getting their information from. So I personally, as much as I like looking at the weather apps, I don't take them seriously, because there was this one time where my friend's like, there's nothing tomorrow. And I'm like, no, it's going to snow tomorrow. And she's like, no, it's not. My app doesn't show it. Within 30 minutes, she calls me. She's like, it's going to snow tomorrow. I'm like, so 30-minute difference, you can see that it went from nothing in the forecast to tomorrow it's snowing. So that's where I'm like, okay, these apps are good to have as a reference just on the go, but it's important to tune into actual reliable weather forecasting places like the National Weather Service. Like each region in the country has its own office. For the New York area, it's the New York City. It's in Long Island. For in Jersey, it's Mount Holly. Like, they're on Instagram. They're not on Instagram, but they're on Twitter. They're on Facebook. You could go on their website. Just a simple Google search for the National Weather Service forecast. That's where you're going to find the most reliable. And it takes no more than a few minutes to just
so it's maybe 5 more minutes than it would to open a weather app, but ultimately the information is more
getting
reliable.
you something that you actually need. Exactly.
I want to make sure we change gears a little bit and talk about your photography. So how did that come into the picture with everything else that you've taken on?
So chasing these storms, what I was seeing, I couldn't show you. I can't show you. I want to show people around me. I want to explain to them. Even though I can take my camera now and I take photos, it still doesn't do justice to what I'm seeing. You have to definitely feel it. But that's where the photography was born, because I wanted to, I guess, show the world what I was seeing in these storms. Not the destruction part of it necessarily, but just the raw beauty of our planet and our world. So I started, I picked up a camera and I started fidgeting with it in my backyard. And taking those photos actually helped me kind of like learn more about, see, when you read the textbooks, when you're learning meteorology, it's not the same as when you're seeing it in the field. Because you're looking at illustrations, you're looking at pictures, but like, it's not the same as experiencing the clouds. So you're like, oh, those are mammatus clouds. Those are cumulonimbus clouds. Like, you're kind of like learning, okay, it's kind of like putting what you learn out into the field and into real life. So that's how the photography began, where I started taking pictures of the storms so that I could make people see what I'm seeing. And then from there, the clouds got calm. The skies got calm and everything. The sun came out. I was like, what am I going to do now? And then the city that I've been, like, I live in Jersey, so the city I've been living parallel to, I'm like, what's that there? And I started, like, seeing New York City in a completely different eye than before, because being here, a lot of people, coming from having an immigrant background, everyone's so obsessed with New York City. And I'm like, when you, like, obviously I love it, but like, prior to photography, I was like, what's the big deal? Like, what is this? Like, why is everybody so obsessed? Because I wasn't seeing what they were seeing. But then once I started picking up the camera and when the skies were calm, I started taking photos of New York City. And then I was like, okay, I started noticing the beauty of the buildings, the facade, and then I started meeting other creatives like Alex, and with his lineups and the aerial photography. I was like, so I fell in love with New York City in a completely different way. So it's like the storms kept me alive in my most crucial moments in life, but it was the city that kind of like picked me up too.
That's beautiful.
I don't know how to explain it, because like being born in Istanbul, I am a city girl. At the end of the day, I might not be a New York City girl, but I am a city girl. So like being able to see the beauty in a city is completely, it's different, because like I just, there's a lot of parts of New York City where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just witnessed that. But to be able to see, like, for it to overpower and just see the raw beauty of everything, and just, when they say that the city that never sleeps and the city of dreams, it really is that. You just have to see it for what it is. You can't, you just can't stop.
Speaking of seeing things for what they are, what feeling and story are you trying to convey through the photography that you share with the world? Whether it's storms, whether it's different aspects of the city, what ultimately do you want people to take away?
So, being someone that has struggled with mental health and, depression and all that stuff. So, it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole and just be in the dark. And sometimes when I take my photos, a lot of people, like, they take it as like, oh, you're showing off because, you're boasting about it. I'm like, no, it's actually the opposite. I'm trying to give you guys a reason to push past, like, to show you that there is more to life, to show you that there is beauty. There is beauty in a storm, in a chaos, in destruction. Even for photojournalism related things, when we're taking photos of like the aftermath of these storms, even in the most destructive parts of the storm, we find things where like we'll find like the flag standing still and everything else obliterated. Just small little like hints to show us that like yes, something horrific happened, but we have to keep moving forward. So that's what I try to do with my photography. It's to kind of, I guess, give people hope. I mean, maybe I have to do a better job at kind of conveying that message through maybe my caption or explaining it and trying to connect better with my audience. But that's my ultimate goal, to show people that like, yes, I might be lucky in terms of how I got here, but it's not luck. It's the sacrifice and the everything that my family had to put up. So this is my way of kind of paying them forward, like making sure that it's worth everything that my family went through.
Absolutely.
So my goal is to just show people the light. That's the best way I can explain it.
I think one of the beautiful aspects of your story is that there's so many layers, and that your passion for storm chasing and acknowledging and appreciating the beauty around us also allowed you to uncover this other passion, which is photography. Right. And now you're at the intersection of where they meet.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I also want to ask you, when it comes to what you hope to do with all of this that you've done thus far and taking it a step further, what can people look forward to? I know that you're in school to kind of formalize that meteorologist training, so props to you for that as well. But what else are you hoping to tap into?
So everything with meteorology and photography, the one part where they actually meet hand in hand is the journalism. So that's one thing that I am actively trying to pursue, to be better at, to communicate better. That's one thing I definitely need to work on, where I'll be like, oh my God, there's a storm coming, and I'll completely leave out like where, what time, who's going to get impacted. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you know, because in that moment, I'm like, I know where the storm is coming and where it's going to go, but people don't. So that's where journalism is, where it connects everything. It connects the photography, the storytelling, the visuals, it connects the information, the data, everything combines there. So that's, you know, in additional to formalizing my meteorology degree, that's where I actively am trying to now, I guess, find my place in the journalism world as both a photojournalist and as a newly developing, like, actual on-field journalist. I know beautiful. I have, like, a lot to learn and discover and everything, but honestly, maybe some people might have gone through the normal route of going to school and this and that. Mine was a little backwards because I chose to get married and have kids, and, you know, I put my school on hold. That was at the time, my way of approaching things, right or wrong. It doesn't change anything. So now it's just a matter of moving forward with what it is.
Absolutely. And right or wrong aside, it's your story at the end of the day. And it's nonlinear. And tied to something I said earlier, you are living proof that everyone's on their own timeline. Yeah. Whatever you decide to pursue, whether it's sooner, whether it's later, the important thing is that you've taken a chance on yourself and you're actually doing it. So truly, a round of applause.
Thank you.
Because it takes a lot. And I think it's beautiful as well that through your platform, you've not only used it to empower other people with the information, but to really shed light on what's overlooked, you know, whether it comes to the safety aspect and the importance of educating yourself and turning to the right resources.
Correct.
And then on the flip side with photography, appreciating a city that maybe those of us who live here take for granted. And I've experienced a sunrise with you, actually 2 sunrises with you. And I also want to end on a high note of talking about what is the Naz touch within the photography. You know, some people may argue within the concept of a sunrise, you know, you're taking a picture of the same Empire State Building that was there last sunrise, but what makes each of these moments and each picture captured different?
I think one thing that a close friend of mine pointed out was my love for the sky. So what he noticed was that while people focus on the buildings, I was always focusing on, like, the grander picture was of the sky itself. So I guess where my touch comes in is that there's more atmosphere than not for me. But lately I've been focusing on details, more details, and just kind of observing and kind of freezing in time the small things that are slipping away from our fingertips so easily now, especially with technology.
Yeah.
I think that's what it would be. It would just be, atmospheric and then like a little more in-depth detail of things.
Based on your life story so far, what advice would you give people who either want to pursue any of the two passions that you're already pursuing, or are trying to figure out how to incorporate a passion that they have and might feel like it's too late or they don't know where to start? What helped you when you were in that position and starting off?
So I still to this day, like, I feel like I'm getting old. I have 2 kids and I should just sit my butt down, get a conventional job.
No.
But that's not me. It's not who I am. And like a lot of people say, you only live once. And
Amen.
I don't want to leave behind a legacy that is not me and irrelevant. Like, even if I touch even one person's life, it's better than not. And most importantly, my kids. So as a mom, as a female, as someone who's, past the age of, going to new colleges and this and that, like, I'm a single mom of 2. So it's like there's a lot of backlash against what I'm doing, but I just say that, like, don't lose that fire. That, like, every single day I wake up, I literally, you know how you think of a little child that's, like, excited because they're going to get their favorite candy? Yeah. That's how you have to wake up. You have to just wake up with the idea that this is what I want and I want to get it. And there's going to be downsides to it. There's going to be people telling you can't do it. They're going to try to, tell you you're a woman, your place is not there, or you're a mom. But you know what? My kids are happier seeing me being out there rather than not. Because once I lose myself, then they lose their mother too. Because, that's who they see and that's who they look up to. And then it pushes my daughter to be like, okay, I'm going to go out. And like, maybe they're not going to be a storm chaser, but I push them to see what they are passionate about and to go down that route, no matter how many people hit you back with their own insecurities. That's what it comes down to. It's just people who are afraid to take that step, and at the time that they couldn't, they will project it onto you. They will tell you you can't do it because they were afraid to do it. Like, there will be times when, and there's right now is still times where I struggle, whether it's financially, mentally, but that the struggle's going to be there whether I do it or not. I'd rather struggle and get somewhere rather than struggle and stay the same.
Yeah, make progress in any capacity.
Correct.
If your 2 kids were sitting with us right now and I were to ask them, tell me about your mom, what do you hope they answer back?
I hope that they, I don't want to get emotional on this,
It's okay.
I really hope that it helps them see, like, their goals for what they are, and to not give up, no matter who in our family or their friend groups. Like, the sky isn't the limit. It's past that. That's how I see it. Like, as a meteorology major, as a storm chaser, as someone who is obsessed with the sky is not our limit. And we know that. We can go way past that. The universe is never ending. There is no end to it. So it's like our limit is only in our brain. It's only in our mind. So I really hope that one day they look back and they realize how far, because I take them to these places. My kids have witnessed an aurora. They've witnessed totality, solar eclipse. They've witnessed things that I didn't experience till I was past my 30s. And they're like, what? They were like 8 and 9 at the time when they experienced this. Maybe they didn't fully understand it, but I know that when they get older, they're going to look back and they're going to be like, I did this with my mom. And the things that they're seeing are so, like, surreal that it gives them, I think if anything, it gives them more wings to fly towards their dreams and their imaginations, because it tells them, like, it's like looking into a box and just being confined to that. There's so much more to this world that we overlook and think that, like, my daughter in the beginning, she was so upset with, like, getting bullied in school, this and that. I'm like, listen, the world is not just made up of your school. There's more to it. So I feel like I really hope that like every experience, no matter how stressful it is with me, because there are days where we're on the road and I'm sleepless, I'm cranky, it happens.
You're human.
But the important thing is that like it helps them see the world through a different view than what conventional people would, I guess. I don't want to say people, but like the conventional idea of what they would see. And I hope that that makes them want to be better and just not take no for an answer. Because that's what I'm trying to do. As hard as it is, no matter how many people tell me no, sometimes I let it get to me. But then the next day I'm like, nope, I can't let this get to me.
Yeah. You already wear so many hats. Mm-hmm. I'm sure your plate is beyond overflowing. Mm-hmm. What else is something that people would be surprised to know about everything that it entails to do what you have decided to pursue?
I'm actually a professional makeup artist.
Girl, what?
Attended I attended a makeup academy for maybe 10 months. I got my certification in bridal, beauty, editorial, special effects, theater.
Naz, what can't you do? You were a superwoman.
So, but there's a interesting way of how I got into that is because being a storm chaser and just constantly being on the go, you kind of, and you're not the one that's in front of the camera. You're always behind it. So your appearance at some point becomes like, oh, it's okay. I'm not the one being photographed. I'm not the one that's being out in the front. So you let yourself go in a sense. And that doesn't necessarily mean you start to dress completely like bad, but you definitely let yourself go to the point where, it's easy to just feel not enough, not pretty enough. So I started to feel very boyish with what I was doing, driving a pickup truck and driving through muddy terrain. So I was like,
there's nothing wrong with that, for the record.
Of course, there totally isn't. But, when you're looking at it from a societal perspective, it's like, you don't look like your standard female. So I was like, okay, how can I change this? So then I actually, like I said, I went to school for makeup. I went for the full 10 months. And then I've worked for New York Fashion Week. I've worked for just last season. I worked for Victoria's Secret Adore Me backstage. I did makeup for one of their top models. So like that was something really, I definitely don't do makeup as I do photography and everything else, because as much as I love doing makeup and the way that helped, again, like I said, it's just I didn't feel good about myself, and I was like, I'm really letting myself go. I don't feel feminine anymore. So I got into that in an attempt to kind of just refine my feminine side, So, and that actually really empowered myself and my daughter too, because, and you know what, even my son, because like there were times when he would just like, do blush on me and he would help me. And a lot of people were afraid. They're like, with all the things going on right now, they're like, and especially culturally and religiously, they're like, well, he's a boy, he shouldn't really be doing that. And I'm like, he's into what he's into, that doesn't change his, I don't know how to word it, but like, he's a boy, he's into girls, he's only 10 though, but like, it's like, I feel like we tend to make it more than what it is. Mm-hmm. Him putting a little bit of blush on his mom is not going to do anything. And even if it did, like, so what? That doesn't change his identity and his amazingness,
Yeah, and who he is at his core, the values and morals.
So I'm the type of girl that's driving a pickup truck. My favorite color is blue. I'm the total opposite of like the pink and this and that. So, and I made sure my kids were raised that way. But yeah, I've worked Fashion Week. I've actually finished my 7th season with Runway 7 in New York City. So yeah,
you were incredible.
Yes, but and I like having that option, because usually as a creative, when we're doing photo shoots and portraits and stuff, I like being in full control of being able to guide my client and be like, okay, we're gonna do this. Let's do the makeup this way. But being able to like going into makeup, at first I didn't like it at all. I hated makeup because I was like, I don't like this.
It can be intimidating as
well. It is. But as you go into it, and then besides doing makeup on yourself, when you start doing makeup on other people, their reaction is really, truly insane. Like, you realize how much of an impact you can have on people feeling, and especially being a female, being a woman, once I saw the look on the women's faces that I was doing makeup on and how beautiful they felt, I was like, this is why. So if and when I do makeup, it's literally just to empower and just make other women around me feel more beautiful.
One of the themes that I'm noticing throughout our conversation is this, I'm not going to say inner conflict, but your internal thought process of knowing who you are and what you want and how that compares to what's expected of you.
Yes.
In moments where a lot is expected of you, how have you been able to ground yourself back and introspect on putting yourself first, ultimately, and prioritizing that over the external noise?
Yeah, so that does happen a lot where, like I said, my family isn't necessarily holding me back. In fact, they're the opposite. They're pushing me forward. However, there is times when, they do cause that like internal turmoil where I have to think about which way do I go? Because like you said, there's so many routes that I could take. But at the end of the day, I look at my kids and I'm like, who am I living for? One, I'm living for them first and foremost, but I'm also living for me. Because at the end of the day, like, yes, I want to make my family proud. Yes, I want to make my peers proud. But if I'm not happy and if I'm not content with what I'm doing and who I am, then it's just a waste, in my opinion. So I just try to, I cry if I have to. I have my days where I'm in bed and I don't want to do anything and I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and that's completely normal. A lot of us are afraid to feel our emotions and we're afraid to spiral down. But sometimes I feel like, and another thing is like when we're in those moments, I feel like we look for external validation or we look for like a comfort. What I've learned and kind of almost mastered is that like I stay and I curl up into my ball of solitude and I just feel every emotion that I need to feel, whether it's the good, the bad. I cry it out and then I'm like, okay, brush it off and begin again.
That's important to remember too. I mean, everyone has their own coping mechanisms and what they resort
Of
to.
course.
But not being afraid to feel the feels and
facing
releasing
our darkness. That's what I feel like. That's really important. And my intention like of saying that is just that I want people to know that it's okay to feel that. It's completely normal. It's just society and just how we've been living. I feel like makes it feel like it's wrong to feel. It's wrong to cry. It's wrong to be upset. It's wrong to be depressed.
Or to not have a good day.
That too, And then there's also days where we do have amazing days and they shame us for that too, So you got to just tunnel vision when it comes to that. With everything else, I'm like, 100% broaden your mind. But when it comes to your own vision, your own goals, that's where you got to lock into that, like that horse vision or tunnel vision, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for opening your life and being so vulnerable and also talking about your kids and your personal struggles. I really think that you welcomed us into your heart today, and I really appreciate that, and I don't take that lightly. And I hope that those listening, they aren't your kids necessarily, but that they do take all of those life lessons that you're trying to pass on to them as if they knew you.
Yeah.
So thank you again. I hope that you had a good time here.
I did. Can I just add one more thing to moms?
Of course.
So like, especially to moms that might be listening, there's going to be times where you're going to question whether what you chasing your dream is impacting your kid. Because there were times when I was looking at my kid in the back seat, knocked out with their head kind of like slouched over when they could have been comfortably in their bed. But I promise you that like, yes, it's that like temporary discomfort, but in the long run, you're both going to be happier because my kids, I could have easily dropped them off to my dad, to their dad. I could have just been like, you go do your thing, and I could have just done everything myself solo. But I created memories with them, and I created bonds, and we grew up together. That's like, they're literally my best friends. That's the best way I could put it. Beautiful. So just never let the idea of being a mom, and even getting older, just there is no like right time. Everyone, like you said, everyone's story is different. And everyone has their own time when it's their time.
Amen. Well, I wish you the best of luck. Not that you need it, but as you continue to grow your craft and continue to push your own limits, I'm very excited to see your photojournalism.
Thank you. I'm really excited about that.
What you end up doing there. And I encourage everyone to also follow your accounts. How can they get a hold of you?
I'm on Instagram. That's my most active platform.
Okay.
Twitter I have, but that's more to just kind of broadcast my weather related content. But Instagram is my main.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure everyone goes running over.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and thank you all for listening and tuning in. Until next time.